Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're diving into a medical mystery. It all starts with what seems like a simple clue, a red, hot, swollen foot. But here's the thing. This common symptom can be a disguise for a really dangerous condition. And if it's not unmasked in time, the consequences can be, well, devastating. So today, we're going to crack the case.
Okay, so every good investigation starts with the scene of the crime, right? Well, in this case, we're starting with the disguise. This is a condition that's a master of hiding in plain sight, often pretending to be something far, far less serious.
So take a look at this. The first clue we have is a foot that's red, hot, and swollen. Now, you'd probably think, okay, it's an infection, maybe a bad sprain, or even a blood clot, right? And that's the whole problem. This dangerous disguise is exactly why it gets misdiagnosed so often.
But here's the twist. It's not a simple infection. Not at all. The real culprit here has a much more serious name, acute diabetic Charcot-arthropathy. We'll just call it ADCA for short. This is a severe, and I mean severe, complication of diabetes that can literally dissolve the bones and joints in the foot.
And this is why getting it right is so critical. The stakes are just incredibly high. A misdiagnosis here isn't just a minor mistake. We're talking about permanent, life-altering consequences, up to and including the loss of a limb.
So you have to be wondering, how does something this destructive even start? To figure that out, we need to uncover the first major player in this whole thing, a silent accomplice.
And that accomplice is something called diabetic neuropathy. Basically, it's nerve damage. Think of it like this. Your body has a built-in alarm system, pain, that tells you when something's wrong. Well, neuropathy cuts the wires. It just turns that whole system off. So a person can't feel pain in their foot, which means they have absolutely no idea when it's being injured. The alarm is totally silent.
For a while, scientists were trying to figure out exactly how this lack of sensation led to so much damage. And they had two main theories. The French theory, you could call it, pointed the finger at repetitive, unfelt injuries, tiny little traumas that just build up over time. Then there was the German theory, which suggested that wonky blood flow was actually leaching minerals out of the bone, weakening it from the very inside. And as it turns out, they were both kind of right. It all comes together in what we now understand as a truly vicious cycle. It goes like this. The nerve damage means you don't feel an injury. That small, unfelt trauma kicks off a huge inflammatory response. That inflammation weakens the bones, which then makes them more likely to fracture, which creates more trauma, which creates more inflammation. You see? It's just this devastating feedback loop that feeds on itself.
Okay, let's dig into that a little deeper. Because that silent injury, that's just the spark. The real problem, the thing that causes all the destruction, is the body's totally over-the-top reaction to that spark. We're talking about an out-of-control inflammatory firestorm.
So what actually happens is, even a tiny trauma triggers this crazy, out-of-control inflammatory response right there in the foot. The body just floods the area with these pro-inflammatory molecules called cytokines. They're basically chemical messengers that are just screaming, attack, attack! And at the same time, the body's own calming down system, its anti-inflammatory brakes, well, they just fail to show up.
And the science on this is really clear. This isn't a normal response. It's an abnormally intense, prolonged reaction. It's an excessive, uncontrolled chain reaction that, once it gets going, is basically inevitable under these circumstances.
All right, I know this diagram looks a little complicated, but let's break it down. It shows us exactly what's happening on a cellular level. You see those highlighted molecules? Those are the inflammatory messengers, the cytokines we were just talking about. After an injury, they flood the scene, and they basically kick off a chain reaction that wakes up these little cells called osteoclasts. And their job? To break down bone. So this is the how inflammation directly leads to bone being destroyed.
So here's the absolute crucial point. That whole chemical storm of inflammation, it flips a master switch in the body. It's called the RANKL pathway. You can think of RANKL as the big red button for bone destruction. Once it's pushed, it sends out a powerful signal telling the body to literally start demolishing its own bone. And this is the key takeaway. It's not the first little injury that's the main problem. It's the body's own runaway inflammatory response that causes the real devastating damage.
And all of this, it leads us right to the scene of the crime. We can now see the devastating result of all this internal chaos. The very foundation of the foot literally starts to crumble.
Okay, so in a healthy body, Your bones are always being remodeled. It's a perfectly balanced process. You've got a crew of bone builders, the osteoblasts, that form new bone. And you've got a demolition crew, the osteoclasts, that clear away old bone. It's like a constant, perfectly managed renovation project.
But in ADCA, remember that Rankel master switch? It basically tells the demolition crew, the osteoclasts, to go into overdrive. They go into a destructive frenzy. And that delicate balance, it's completely, totally lost.
And we can actually see this happening in the lab data. When researchers look at biological markers, they find that the markers for bone destruction just skyrocket. They go through the roof. At the same time, the markers for bone formation, they don't move. They stay totally flat. It is, without a doubt, a one-sided demolition.
And this massive imbalance, this is what causes the foot's entire structure, its foundation, to just collapse from the inside out. This is what leads to the rapid bone loss, the fractures, the severe deformities that are the classic signs of this condition. To put it simply, the demolition crew is working 24/7, and the construction crew never even got the call to show up. Okay, so we've identified the silent accomplice, we've uncovered the inflammatory firestorm, and we've seen the destruction it causes. The big question now is, how do we crack this case for good? And more importantly, how do we stop the damage?
Well, the solution isn't some single magic pill. The absolute most critical thing, the real key to all of this, is catching it early. It's about rapid detection and intervention to shut down that inflammatory firestorm before it can cause permanent, irreversible damage.
So managing this takes a really comprehensive approach. Let's walk through the keys. Step 1, clinicians have to be suspicious. Anytime a patient with diabetes and neuropathy has a red, hot, swollen foot, ADCA has to be on the table. Step 2, you have to act fast. That means immediately getting all weight off that foot to calm down the inflammation. Step 3, you have to treat the whole person, not just the foot. That means managing the underlying diabetes and neuropathy. And finally, step 4, patient education is absolutely essential. You have to empower the patient with the knowledge to protect their feet for the long haul.
So now that we've unmasked this condition, the question is, could you spot the real danger in time? The next time you hear about a red, hot, swollen foot in someone with diabetes, you'll know it might not be a simple sprain. You'll know there's a deeper story, and you'll know to look past the disguise, to see the real danger that could be lurking just beneath the surface.